Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. And today I want to talk about one of the greatest Cuban pitchers that really is not talked about very much, but he's considered one of the best players to ever come out of Cuba, and that's Jose Mendez. And Jose Mendez was a player that, he was born in 1887 and died in 1928. He died young. He died at the age of 43, and he was known as in Cuba as the Black Diamond, El Diamante Negro, and he became a legend in Cuba, and is actually in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame and in the National Baseball Hall of Fame here in the United States. And he started pitching in 1907, and he really was a small guy. He was 5'10", 152 pounds. Kind of would remind me of, if I would compare it to a pitcher, maybe like a Pedro Martinez style pitcher, where he wasn't that big and he was kind of skinny, but he was just threw an incredible fastball, and he threw a hard fastball and with a deceptively easy motion and a snapping curveball. In his first Cuban League season, he went 9-0 and led the Almendares team to the Cuban League pennant. That summer, he made his United States debut with the Cuban Stars, and he went 3-0 for the Brooklyn Giants. In 1908, in the middle of the second occupation of Cuba, Mendez pitched to games that established him as a legend. The Cincinnati Reds were visiting Havana, playing the Cuban League teams, and Mendez completely dominated. Against the Cincinnati Reds, Mendez pitched 25 consecutive scoreless innings in 3 appearances. And I'll talk a little bit more. I'm just kind of reading from his Wikipedia page. This is his old-time Black Stars. He does have some early Cuban cards, but they're extremely expensive. They're up in the high 4 figures, even 5 figures. A couple of his cards sold in the REA auction, and I know one of them went for over $10,000. They're very tough to come by, and there's very few cards of him as an actual an actual player during his playing days era. But again, he pitched 25 consecutive scoreless innings against the Reds. In his first start, he allowed just 1 single by Miller Huggins in the 9th inning, while striking out 9. His next appearance came in relief, where he held the Reds scoreless for 7 innings on just 2 hits. He concluded with another shutout, and his statistics against the Cincinnati Reds were 2-0, ERA of 0 in 3 games. He just was an incredible pitcher. Several days later, Almendares played a minor league team from Key West, and Mendez pitched 2 more shutouts and his second no-hitter, giving him 43 consecutive scoreless innings against major league and minor league competition. Over the next 6 seasons, Mendez continued to dominate, with records of 15-6, 7-0, 11-2, 9-5, 10-0, leading the league and win 3 times. His Almendares team won 3 pennants out of 6 campaigns. In the United States, during the summers, he pitched just as well. Some sources say that he achieved a 44-2 record with the Cuban Stars in 1909. Now, it's tough to get records from those days, but that's what they say that he did. It says that in box scores by Scott Simkus shows a more modest but impressive 14-2 record with 2 saves. He pitched a 10-inning no-hitter in July of 1909. One of his losses came on July 1st in Chicago when Rube Foster and the Leland Giants defeated him 1-0 when a drop fly ball led to an unearned run against him. And when major league teams came to visit Cuba over the years, Mendez continued to pitch against them. According to a compilation of box scores by Gary Ashwell during the 1908 and 1913 against major league competition, Mendez compiled a record of 9-11 in 24 games. pitching 18 complete games and 204 innings. His opponents were top major league teams, including the 1903 and the 1909 and the 1910 Detroit Tigers, the 1910, the 1912 Philadelphia A's, and the 1911 Philadelphia Phillies, and the New York Giants, and the Brooklyn Dodgers. So all of these teams came to Cuba to play him. And he faced pitchers like Eddie Plank, who he beat twice, and Chief Bender, who he beat once. And in an article in Baseball Magazine, 1913, by Era Thomas, and I'm going to show you an actual photograph that I picked up at the National of Jose Mendez. These photographs are very, very rare. It's very tough to find an actual photograph of him. And this photograph was from an original negative. And even though it says a type 4, because it was printed about 20 years after the original photograph, but from the original negative, it does say here his name, which is Jose de la Caridad Mendez. And he was a pitcher and from 1908 to 1920, or it says 1919. So it's really, really, this is pretty rare. It did cost me quite a bit of money at the National. And I showed it to Al from Love of the Game, and he had never seen this photograph. And he said he'd only sold a couple of photographs from that era of Jose Mendez, and they sold pretty well. So I was lucky enough to get this photo and share it with you guys. It's a very, very rare actual photograph of Jose Mendez during his playing days era. In the article written in Baseball Magazine, 1913, Ira Thomas, a catcher with the Philadelphia A's, had visited Havana twice, wrote the following about Mendez. Mendez is a remarkable man. More than one big leaguer from the States has faced him and left the plate with a wholesome respect for the great Cuban star. It is not alone my opinion, but the opinion of many others who have seen Mendez pitch, that he ranks among the best in the game. I do not think he is Walter Johnson's equal, but he is not far behind. He has terrific speed, great control, and uses excellent judgment. He's a natural ball player. If there ever was one, and with his pitching, it is a no wonder that the Cubans win games. At that, he's a remarkable pitcher. And if he were a white man, he would command good position on any major league club in the circuit. Later in 1914, he developed arm trouble. So he cut back on his pitching and became a fielder. He became a shortstop. And again, he played with several other teams in the United States and the Negro Leagues, including the Chicago American Giants, the Detroit Stars, before finally signing on in 1920 as a player manager with the Kansas City Monarchs. And with the Monarchs, he still was a great pitcher, still was a great player. And he continued to split his time between shortstop and pitching. And under his leadership, the Kansas City Monarchs won pennants in 1923. So he was a player manager at the time. The Monarchs won pennants in 1923, 1924, and 1925. He gradually adjusted and became a very effective pitcher again, albeit with lighter pitching loads that he had carried during the 1908 to 1914 during his pitching prime. In 1923, Mendez, and now he's an older guy here. In 1923, he had a 12-4 record, followed by 4-0, 2-0, and 3-1 in the next 3 seasons. Mendez became the star of the first Negro League World Series in 1924. And against the Hilldale Club of the Eastern Colored League, he appeared in 4 games with a 2-0 record, including a shutout victory for the deciding final game. During the Winter Leagues, he went back to Cuba. He played in Cuba for a long time. And, his team was considered the most dominant in the history of Cuban baseball. And other members of his Cuban team in Santa Clara, when he played in Santa Clara, were Oscar Charleston, Alexander Ohms, Dobie Moore, and Bill Holland, and Pedroso, another Cuban player. So Mendez, again, was one of the best pitchers in the history of Cuba. His Cuban record is 76-28, and he ranks first all time in career winning percentage of 731. In the United States, with the Cuban Stars, in 1909 he was 10-1. In 1909 he was and then 1910 he was 4-1. His total record, for the if you look at the records from his they call it in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and you look up his actual record, it shows him as 30-9, because that's kind of the only kind of record that it shows there, as far as his. If you look it up on the Baseball Reference, Baseball References shows him as a 30-9 record, because that's the only record that it shows is from the Negro Leagues. So he was 30-9 in the Negro Leagues, but in the Cuban leagues, he was one of the most dominant players, ever, really, and he's a legend. And again, he was called the Black Diamond. And Miller Huggins once said that if he was a white player, that he was ready to sign him and give him a $30,000 bonus. And this is in the early 1900s, when players didn't make that kind of money. And Miller Huggins considered him, as good as Christy Mathewson and Grover Cleveland Alexander. He also did pitch against Christy Mathewson, and he beat Mathewson once, but Mathewson beat him twice. And again, you're talking a team from the United States, the Giants, playing a Cuban team, so it's tough to compare the actual teams. But just beating Christy Mathewson, it was a feat in itself. Let's take a look at the back of his Black Stars card. Now again, one of his cards are super rare. I don't have any of his Cuban cards. I'd love to get one day. But I'm going to go ahead and read the back of the Black Stars card. It says, Mendez was a very dark Cuban right-hander. In 1908 and 1909, he defeated Jack Coombs and Eddie Plank when the Philadelphia A's visited Cuba, and he split 2 games with Christy Mathewson and the New York Giants. So I guess he did split 2 games, 1-1. He did win 1 game and lost 1 game. Mendez had long fingers, permitting him to get great spin on the ball. He came to the U.S. with the Cuban Stars in 1909 and had a 44-2 record. That was in the Negro Leagues. After arm trouble, he became a shortstop and outfielder. Some claimed that he was faster than Smokey Joe Williams. So that is Jose Mendez, one of the greatest Cuban pitchers of the day. And this is his actual photograph from the original negative back in the early 1900s of Jose Mendez. A very rare photograph indeed. Something you won't see very, very often. And I was able to pick this up at the National from Phil Gary, who got it as part of the, from the Hakes auction, and it was part of the collection, God, I just can't remember the guy's name right now, but it's one of the largest Cuban collector in the world that ended up leaving his collection to Hakes auction. So just wanted to share some information about one of the greatest pitchers that you may have never heard of, but one of the greatest pitchers in Cuban history and in the Negro Leagues also. And again, pitched to some of the greatest Negro League stars. And as you can see, and you heard some of the information I shared with you, he was an extremely dominant pitcher during his day, and could have definitely played in the major leagues if he would have been a white man. So thanks for watching, guys. It's Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Have an awesome, awesome day, and I'll catch you on the next one.